Hey everybody, David the AI Guide here. Happy Saturday, and there is a ton of breaking news this week in the AI world. 4 things just happened yesterday, came out yesterday on Friday, and one came out on Tuesday, and it's the one on Tuesday I want to talk about. So there's a guy named Peter Diamandis. Some of you may have heard of him. He's super famous and brilliant and well known when it comes to AI and breakthrough technologies. Peter founded the X Prize organization, which does challenges to create breakthrough technologies to solve the world's biggest problems. And he also co-founded Singularity University along with Ray Kurzweil, one of the most other brilliant people in the world. And together they are using this university to bring to life new companies with breakthrough ideas. So that's one kind of university learning that would really do something for your life. But that's a separate subject. The reason I bring Peter up is because Peter wrote a book called The Future is Faster Than You Think. And it turns out to be literally true. And the latest example of that is the news that broke Tuesday. And some of you may remember this really old cartoon from the 1960s called The Jetsons. And the Jetsons featured a robot in their house that cooked and cleaned and did everything, coming to a theater near you finally, more than 50 years after expected, probably. But the other thing that was super cool was flying cars. Now, that flying car folded up into a briefcase. But what is on the near horizon now, news out of Orlando, Florida, that a company is starting up a flying car operation, and they expect it to be fully operational within 5 years. And this company is going to fly flying cars from Orlando to Tampa, and it will cut a multiple-hour journey down to 30 minutes. And if you think this is a one-off, it isn't. I think I've mentioned before, but I'll definitely mention it again here now, is that Uber and others have been working directly with NASA and the FAA to put together the technology use case for the FAA for what's called urban air mobility, UAM, which is flying cars. And here's where AI comes into all of this, whether it's Orlando or New York City, where air taxis will be going from a building uptown to a building downtown in minutes, instead of spending half an hour in a cab or half an hour on the subway. Just that's a New York City example. A Chicago example would be O'Hare to downtown in 5 minutes. And an LA or San Francisco example would be Silicon Valley to downtown in 5 minutes or so, or in LAX to downtown in 5 minutes. So this will be a breakthrough technology, urban air mobility, and it's super close. 5 years is close. But what Uber and others have been working with NASA and the FAA on is these vehicles will obviously be in the national airspace, which is regulated and controlled by the FAA. So they're already working with the government to get all the licensing in place. And NASA comes in because NASA is the country's foremost authority on aeronautical research. I don't know if you knew that, but it's the National Aeronautical and Space Administration. So the aeronautical, they've got a bunch of cool stuff going on at NASA in aerospace that I'll talk about another time. But they're the leading authority to work with the FAA on how will these vehicles fit into the national airspace. In addition to drones, which we've talked about very recently, But particularly for urban air mobility, how is this going to work, and how is it going to be controlled, and how is it going to fit in? This work is nearing completion. They've already been working on it for several years, so this is not something that is going to hold up the launch of urban air mobility. What's going to really drive urban air mobility will be proving that it works, right? So building the first vehicles, which are already in prototype, and actually demonstrating that they work, they're reliable, they're safe, and that humans aren't going to have a high casualty rate by using these, right? So the direct comparison for these things, as far as the FAA and probably another government entity called NHTSA, or the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, because these will be air highways. NHTSA will be taking a look at how does the safety compare on these new urban air mobility vehicles to ground-based transportation, which, as we've talked about, still has a very high fatality rate, right? Here in the U.S., something like 25 to 40,000 people a year get killed in cars or trucks. So this is a lot of people. So anything better than that is going to get licensed. And urban air mobility is going to change everything, right? Because it's going to dramatically relieve surface traffic. And once it reaches scale, it'll provide a lot of connections that people don't have right now, like, say, from small outlying towns to the nearest airport, which might take 2 hours to drive, but in a UAM will only take 15 minutes. World changing. One of the many things that will help people in rural areas feel less isolated in the future. Now that's on down the road. These things are going to be used first in major urban areas like Orlando, Tampa, the New York metro area, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, LA, San Francisco, etc., Houston. So this is big, big stuff. And with the release of this week, it's become real, right? It's not just that Uber and these guys have been working with NASA and the FAA on licensing and airspace and all that stuff, but now it's actually being commercialized, and Uber will be right in that mix of that 5-year timeline. So big, huge changes in transportation. Someone asked me yesterday what I thought the 3 areas that would be most heavily impacted by AI were going to be over the next 10 years. And 2 of the 3 are in transportation. One is trucking, and the other is self-driving vehicles, which includes these urban air mobility vehicles. Huge changes coming to the transportation infrastructure. So we'll be keeping our eye on this, and we're going to break down these 4 other things that just came out yesterday on Friday that are all individually amazing and collectively prove the point that we've been talking about a bunch, which is that AI is an exponential technology starting to move up the exponential curve. So is sensors, which is what urban air mobility vehicles are going to use in spades, sensors and cameras. These are exponential and converging technologies, and they're going to change everything. So for you folks who are in high school or college or just out of college and you're thinking about careers, this is a big, big area, right? And there's going to be lots of jobs and you don't necessarily have to be an engineer. There's going to be a boatload of engineering jobs related to all this as it develops and rolls out. But there's also marketing, there's also finance, there's also maintaining the vehicles, maintaining the landing pads. There's tons and tons of opportunities that will be created in this field, and it's something to think about getting in on early because it's going to be super exciting. So that's it for today. Hope you like this. Please subscribe. Please share with your friends, and please stay positive because humans are very much needed. AI is not going to take over humanity anytime in the near future. There's way too many things that are very complex to automate with AI that I talked about in just my last video. And this is going to be a fast process, but we're talking in the 5 to 20 year time frame for almost all the stuff we're talking about right now. Thanks a lot. Take care. Be well. Stay safe.